Masha, you're muted.
I already started the conversation. Well, welcome everybody. I think we are live, so everybody on the website can follow us now. I'm very happy that we're all here, that all the participating artists could
Masha, you're muted.
Oh.
Not anymore.
Okay. I already started the conversation. So it was a bit of a hiccup. Like, we're still, I'm getting used to doing this online. But welcome everybody. My name is Masha. I'm the curator of the show, and I would like to introduce everybody today, and we will have a talk with all the participating artists. I invited Sanneke Huisman as the moderator for this for the talk. She is an independent curator and writer, and she's specialized in media art. But before we go into conversation, I'd like to say a few words about the exhibition and how it came about. Because my initial idea was to do a physical exhibition in Willem II Kunstruimte. And I already invited all the artists. We had a whole plan to install the exhibition, but yeah, of course, everybody knows why we can't do it anymore. So I came up with the idea to do something online, and I didn't know what to do. Jean-Baptiste Castel, one of the participating artists, came up with the idea to make an online exhibition. And well, this is the result. Maybe if you've all looked around the exhibition already, it looks great. I'm really happy with it. Yeah, maybe it's nice to say a little bit about how I invited all the other artists, and I'd like to say a few words of thank you to everybody involved. Just one moment. Sorry. Yeah, I met all the artists, or like I've discovered all the works at a graduation show, of sorry. One moment, because something is going wrong. Okay, sorry, everything seems to work. So, yeah, about the works in the exhibition. What the similar thing all artists have in common is that they work with 3D. They differ greatly in aesthetic and technique, but all works share a kind of similar subject matter. And I think with the works, the funny thing is with the works, these artists Can you all hear me? Or yeah, okay, good. Sorry, that's yeah, I think I'd like to say a thank you to Jean-Baptiste and Noël who made the exhibition. And I'd like to thank all the participating artists, and I'm really interested in what you think of the exhibition. And maybe you can all tell a little bit about your work. Maybe I can start with Lucas and Daniel, because your work is named after the show is named after your work. And it's a collaborative project between you two. In the work you see like it's a reconstruction of places in real life that you normally can't go to, and you used footage you found on the internet to reconstruct these places. Can you tell a little bit about how you made this work and what triggered you to make it, and how your collaboration went?
Sure. Should I maybe start, Daniel, and then I can pass over to you. So, Oh, the Places You'd Go, it's a work from 2017. And I was at the time just watching a lot of drone videos on YouTube, and I was really fascinated by this idea. First of all, like how maybe how it opens up new ways of looking at things, new camera angles, new camera movements that were previously not really possible, but then also specifically how it becomes possible to look at things that you wouldn't be able to look at before, similarly to how maybe satellite imagery changed the way that we look at the world. I felt that that drones or quadcopters with cameras kind of were the beginning of a new kind of change in a similar manner. And then I found at some point a video on YouTube where two people are flying a drone through Skid Row, which is supposedly one of the most dangerous streets in LA. And I thought it was kind of, and in the end, somebody tries to steal the drone. But I thought it was a really interesting maybe artifact or something like this, where it's this area that for different kinds of reasons, or like areas in the end, but specifically this area that you wouldn't be able to go to because maybe you would find it too dangerous, or maybe, you know, like for whatever reasons. But that drones kind of open up this exploration, but then also that I could just sit behind my laptop in the Netherlands and just watch this footage. I thought that was really interesting. So I started looking at ways in how I can kind of preserve something out of those videos. So I started collecting videos, drone videos of places that would be inaccessible for some kind of reason, and started making these with photogrammetry, making this 3D reconstruction of these places. And I had this one video laying around, and then Daniel and I know each other for a while already, and have been wanting to work on something. And then at some point we decided Daniel had some new tracks, and he wasn't really sure what to do with them. And I had this video laying around, but I hadn't done anything with it. And so we decided to kind of make this into an audiovisual work that can stand alone. And I don't know, maybe you want to talk a bit more about the audio, Daniel?
Yeah, no, thanks, Lucas. Yeah, I think in terms of the audio, I would work quite a lot with kind of unconscious editing and modulating without actually knowing what's happening in the audio, and just having the visual representation of the sound, and then going back to it and kind of seeing what happened afterwards. Afterwards, it's already been recorded, and then working with the recordings. And I thought that technique was kind of a good match for the visual concept of only being able to access places not in person, but via a drone or via a 3D footage. So yeah, we just thought this was a good match, and then we just developed it into the piece.
Yeah, so on the website, we really wanted this kind of to become this also kind of generative, but also infinite journey, where kind of there's all these kind of audio snippets, or like, you know, these different tracks, but also these video snippets that are kind of always playing in a different order, and as good as it was technically possible, blend into each other, so that you kind of feel that you're kind of going deeper and deeper into these spaces. I think that was something that we tried to.
Yeah, and it's also good to know for the audience that that this work is actually a website where you can go to, and when you enter the website, you just come in at some point, and when you reload the website, you start at another point, right? It's a bit of the And this website is alltheplacesyougo.net, right?
It's alltheplaces.net.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to know, Jean-Baptiste, your work was shown at the KBK. I saw it at your graduation show. It's you see a living room or a living area where cameras are moving around. In first instance, it's quite a funny movie, but if you look at it more closely, it's kind of disturbing, because this software camera has a lot of power, and it can smash around the whole room, moving around all the furniture. So there's a bit of a sinister undertone in this work. And you raised the question to what extent software cameras violate our sense of reality, if I may say it correctly. Can you tell us what, because I had to look it up, what are software cameras, and this superpower, as you mentioned, is this also something you worry about, or?
What are software camera? Like the camera that we are seeing in the movie, they are camera from the 3D program that I'm using to create a movie. They are usually not seen also inside the movie. When you render an image, the camera is not seen, and the camera doesn't affect any object. The camera usually goes through it. And for this movie, I was also extremely fascinated at the beginning by CGI VFX breakdown video. Those videos are released also by a studio in Hollywood. When they make a blockbuster, they create those videos where they explain all the trickery behind the cinematic image and its production. And in those videos, they use a repertoire of method of disillusionment to reveal all the trickery part of the trickery behind the illusion of the special effect. And those systems lie and deceive the viewer through an approach that focuses more on the spectacular rather than pedagogical. And so those movies contain exploded view, falling object, comparative line, time manipulation, layered perspective, exhibition of the stage, etc. There's also those camera movement in the space. So yeah, so those special effects from the more sublime to the invisible and mundane reveal to the viewer in a technical and spectacular way, approaching reality from a different perspective. And possibility outside of the boundary imposed by the cinematic medium are freely exposed by designer who made those breakdowns video. And they show the true originality of the digital media and fully assume their own medium. So it questions its own tool and its relation to reality by innovating a way of exhibiting the medium on its own materiality. So after this research, because I did my thesis during my master on this topic, I asked myself, like, if the possibility of digital media puts cinematic medium in crisis, or will this type of video evolve, or will cinema only become a special effect, a cinema far beyond possible reality and natural perception, where time is fragmentable and where one can travel through, where one can travel in stock image to explore the artifact that make up the construction. Yeah, so I made this movie, Camera One, that embodied the language of this type of video. So it's an amalgamation of showreel video and cinema movie, where the protagonist, software camera, explore furnished render apartment, all the while discovering a superpower. So this camera is superhuman, capable of traveling through the space and time. And she utilizes multiple temporality to move through filmic space in one seamless movement without using cuts in an infinite loop. So this time is non-linear while leaving an impression of linearity. And
yeah, the nice thing about your work, because it's a bit hidden in the space, because you have to, it's the only work where you have to enter another space. So it's, and it's also, I think, presented the most like how it would have been presented in the real space, because we initially, the idea was to build a construction in which your work would have been displayed. So that's, but in this, the only difference is that you can walk through the wall.
Yeah, yeah, and this idea was to create a room which uses also the. So you see the construction of the room is using the background from the theater background when they make like in a theater or in a cinema studio, they always construct this big wall and with this type of structure behind it. So I wanted to make the same type of structure around this room. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. And I have a question for you, Carl, because it was nice to discover that Balenciaga, do I pronounce it right? Like the fashion house Balenciaga saw your work and I think invited you to make a video trailer for their YouTube channel. And it has the same aesthetics as the work you've shown at the Rietveld and your graduation work. I was wondering, do you see that a lot of because you work for a designer bureau, right, in Stockholm, and do you see that a lot of clients turn to 3D animation instead of real life films or for commercials, or is this?
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting topic, and it's a really big topic. So it's kind of hard to give a summarized answer, of course. But I definitely see kind of throughout a lot of different mediums and industries, kind of how these kind of course, software and the use of 3D is becoming more kind of commoditized and easier for everybody to use. And I think that's something which is super exciting, actually, that nowadays it enables almost anyone can on their own with a computer and through maybe learning through YouTube or other online resources, kind of construct basically, as Jean also touched upon earlier, like you can build your own cinematic films nowadays as an individual, right? So I think that also provides like a lot of opportunities, both for people that are kind of active within the kind of cultural cultural institutions, or people working as artists, or also like right now, as I'm working as a graphic designer in a more kind of traditional design agency, it also kind of enables that type of industry to also kind of produce cinematic or digital content in a different way than 20 years ago, where you kind of required maybe a 20 people team to be able to generate certain images or environments. So it definitely something which is kind of growing, and I think we will see a lot more of.
Yeah. I think we will come back to this topic later in the conversation. First, I have a question for you, Paula, because you made a new work for the exhibition. It's quite new work. And you chose as a topic for your film the awkwardness of choosing an avatar when you enter an online chat room. And I thought it was quite like the awkwardness. I was quite surprised by it, because I always thought like if you choose an avatar, that's an easy way to express yourself differently, or like the way you want yourself to be seen. But maybe you touch upon a really like new currents that your avatar should like that your physical like your avatar on online should express who you are in real life. Is that something? Do I observe this correctly, or?
Yeah. In a way, because what I meant by awkwardness is that, like, for me, when I 3D scan my own body and I put it online, can you hear me? Is the connection okay?
Yeah, you're freezed, but we can hear you. But now not anymore. Well, then I will maybe ask this question later on again and move on to you, Cece, because the thing I liked, you're like, most of the artists are like more critical or have a more critical position, and you were more positive actually about the influence of the virtual and real life. And because your work is set in a dreamlike environment where you have a conversation with your future self, and you talk about how virtual reality and the physical world are more connected in the future, and how this has a positive effect on our environment and our connection to each other and the world. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about what your idea was behind the work, and like if you,
yeah, of course. At the time of making this, I was really positive about the digital world. I saw the types of works that we're making as kind of simulations in and of themselves already. And kind of a little bit what Carl spoke about, that each individual has the power just with their computer to make a whole world, in their bedroom. And this is incredibly powerful. So I wondered how we could use these tools to kind of give each individual greater autonomy to kind of individually shape their reality. And in my film, I am kind of looking at, you know, an accelerated future timeline. It's not in the present moment. After these kind of tools have already kind of more extremely blended with our reality. So it's kind of not like a divide anymore between digital and physical. They're always ever present, both kind of mixed. And currently that is having already like an effect on how we interact with each other, with our environments, and even kind of with our own, you know, consciousness. While it is positive with the lockdown and how everything has kind of turned virtual, and we're kind of disconnected from each other, or our only connections are through screens, this has caused me to kind of reconsider a lot of the notions that I imbued this film with. While I still think it can be a really powerful tool, and it kind of has the ability to kind of wake people up beyond the constraints of our physical reality currently, I still believe that like a greater emphasis on the natural world and natural connections, that should be kind of top priority.
So this situation actually changed your mind a bit, maybe.
Yes, yeah. But I'm still happy with the film, kind of to spark these questions, to get kind of a discussion going with that.
Yeah. Happy to have you back, Paula. We moved on to
sorry, my connection. Yeah, I see.
We can try again.
Sorry that I missed Ceci's talk a bit. Yeah.
No worries. Yeah, we were talking about like maybe we can move back to the question to you.
The awkwardness that you mentioned about others. Because for this video, what was new for me was to include my own body in the animation of the models, and it was just like there was this point in which I conflicted in between what was the image of myself and what I was seeing in the screen, kinda, and I had to like animate my own body following certain dance movements that I practice every morning. That was quite interesting for me. And it was a bit like animating a puppet on the screen. And at some point, I just wondered, like, what type of agency did the body in the screen have? And this is quite interesting for me when it comes to talking about artificial intelligence dating apps. Like, what kind of agency does the robot behind this app have? And how can I explore this in a new video? Because the initial work that I had to present was this VR video game that never came because of Corona. But this next work is more like, it's just another step towards the subject for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you usually work quite a lot with virtual reality, like VR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also, because the work I've seen at the Rietveld, you combined it with sculptures or sculptural work. So often your work is also part of an installation, or a spatial installation. So you have to be physically in a space to experience your work.
Yeah, I play a lot with this, with like mixing objects with the representation of these objects in the virtual world. Yeah.
Nice.
And for me, that's why it's important, like the VR setting, so that you can kind of enter another reality than the one that is in the exhibition room. Yeah.
Yeah, and I discussed the exhibition with Sanneke. We looked at it together, and we were talking about like the fact that the initial idea was to present all of your works in one space, and now we moved to like a digital space. And a question we had was, how do you think, because in a virtual space you can do everything with your work, like for example the work by Lucas we made very big, which wasn't possible if we would have done it physically in the space. And I was wondering, because you haven't seen the exhibition just before a few days before this event, what did you think of the way your work was presented? Maybe I can ask the question first to Lucas. Maybe you can.
Well, I think Noelle and Jabé did a great job of like creating this this online environment, and as you say, like I find this also the play with scale very interesting. Of course, I mean for me it's also just nice to see my video very big. But yeah, for example, also this like what you already mentioned, this the little room that was recreated for Jabé's graduation work. I find it very playful, and I think also it relates to the physical location of Willem II with all these columns, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's also a nice connection to kind of this physical space that sadly we can't be in now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I was talking to a friend lately, and she wrote an essay about the importance of being physically in the space to experience an artwork, and in this time, yeah, we are more used to experience art in a non-physical space or in a virtual space. Do you think it's necessary to experience work in a real space instead of a virtual space, because this kind of work could also work very well in this virtual environment? Do you think it puts an extra layer to it, or maybe?
Are you still talking to me?
Yeah, no, I think maybe somebody else can. Cici, do you have an idea in this?
Yeah, I think because we're dealing with digital animation and the digital world, that this kind of digital environment works perfectly for that. Mm-hmm. But it depends on the work.
Yeah.
So if it's a physical kind of piece, maybe it doesn't extend so great to mm-hmm. the digital environment. But I think definitely this is kind of more sustainable also, which is what I appreciate about mm-hmm. Working digitally, is that you don't need to actually like erect these things in the real world, that we can still come together in another way, which is great.
Yeah, if I can jump in here, because I jumped into the project at a way later stage. And to be honest, when I discovered it, I thought it was really meant to be in a virtual space, since it so nicely reflects on all the elements of a digital environment or a virtual environment. So for me, it was, I think, actually a plus that it was in this beautiful space. Also because it plays so much with these blurring boundaries that I find in many of your works, which I thought was such an interesting red thread, even if it's always difficult to see lines in various practices. For instance, in the fact that this space is also an artwork in itself, so to say. And I was wondering for everyone, like, did you feel that you were collectively working on this environment, or did you really treat the space as if you were just installing it in a neutral space? And I think, neutral is something that is also highly problematized in many of your works. Like, what is the virtual, what is the real, blah, 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 blah. But just maybe, I don't know who point out, but how do you install a space in a space that is created by someone else more explicitly than any other type of space? I don't know if anyone wants to react.
I mean, I can react, but I think it could just simplify the question. There was a lot
There was a lot of spaces. Yeah. No, yeah, I was trying to make a point while at the same time asking a question, which never really works. But because what I actually think I was hinting on is this so-called neutrality of an exhibition space, and now it was a framework or a structure that was more explicitly made by someone else. So maybe what I thought the answer would be is that maybe this is more transparent in the fact that you're just openly saying this is a space created by this and this person. But that was what made my question complicated. But what I wanted to ask is how did you treat it to install a space in a virtual environment built by another artist, and how that worked for you?
Well, I think the interesting thing with the space is, of course, always when you kind of look at a piece of work, it's kind of like an experience for you as a viewer. And I think because the nature of all of these works are digital, as Essi pointed out, the space also becomes a digital space. And I think the kind of distance between the space and the works become maybe closer, or they merge a bit together. So because the kind of environment or the nature of the environment is so similar to the kind of materiality of some of the works, you kind of get a kind of another type of experience. And I think rather than just kind of experiencing these type of work in a physical space. I think that was like the first reaction I had when I kind of saw the setup. But I also think it's really interesting. And then I think also another topic is also the fact that this digital space is kind of still based on like how a physical exhibition would be set up. So you would have text on the wall or text on the floor, and then you would present the work on a screen somewhere. And I think it's kind of interesting that the digital space is also still in some way kind of resembling a real exhibition, even though because of the context and the fact that it is a website or a digital work, it can also, it has the possibility to also kind of go much further, and you could potentially, you know, present the work projected on a super abstract digital shape, or, you know, really like kind of change how you would display the work in ways you maybe couldn't do in reality. So I think that's also kind of interesting, that even though the environment is very different because of the whole digital and physical setting, it still has a lot of kind of similarities and kind of base its starting point on how we're used to perceive works or look at works.
Yeah, that was sort of my final question. Like, could you also envision a virtual space that doesn't have any echoes of physical space? Since indeed now it is it's a mix. But I thought also that when I looked at it, it also makes total sense that there is this echo of physical space, because I think many of your works actually play with this tension field. And there's this tension field of like virtual space and physical space, but also of reality and fiction, and also of the body in the space and representation of the body in the space. So I think going towards a completely virtual space, whatever that is, like completely abstract, and wouldn't make so clearly the point that it maybe makes now, because there's a lot of systemic criticism and tension field of reality and virtual reality, or reality and fiction, or so yeah, definitely. So I was thinking of this criticism that I find in there. And for instance, if I look at your work, Jean-Baptiste, you visualize the software camera, but for me it was also a metaphor of the CCTV camera that is everywhere watching us, and by making it visible but still also showing its immateriality, so to say, I thought there was also maybe a critique on surveillance in there, or am I then going too far?
Yeah, this is not something that I thought when I was doing this work. The idea was more like creating a self-aware camera because it's when the camera in the first room entered this mirror, it's a bit like the idea that Lacan explained when a kid sees himself for the first time, he kind of make himself he distinguish himself from the space and the object around him. So when the camera crossed this mirror, then it kind of split and create this ghost, and then the camera added in every space. But yeah, I didn't thought of that.
And is there a bit of Vertov in there, like a bit of Man with a Movie Camera?
Definitely. The inspiration. Yeah.
It was amazing to see a sort of the digital version of that.
Yeah,
and it's funny. I think there's in many of your work there's sort of autonomy or longing for not maybe autonomy or emancipation of the digital. And then I also think, for instance, of your work, Paula, which is about what reflecting on what an avatar can be, which status it has, like if it can be something on its own or does it have to represent. And is there I was wondering what you think of this, let's call it politicization or so of the avatar. Does it have to resemble something that we find? So that's again maybe this reality question, what we are or what we think we should be in everyday life. How do you see the avatar? Can it be something completely
it's a bit like the same question as for human androids. Why do they need to look like humans, or why do they need to be gendered? So I think it goes the same for avatars. Why do they need to take this specific classic prettiness shape? It could be something way more experimental or way farther, or it could just be different. And that's a topic for me.
Yeah, but do you think there's always this, every time we become so aware, and I think that's what you all do, of frames, of structures, but also of limitations. Also maybe we can't imagine an avatar that isn't or doesn't have any resemblance to the human, as maybe that's the only way we can relate to things. For instance, to do a bit of a sidestep, when I saw the dog of Lucas, I thought, of course, of Donna Haraway and her, she first had the Cyborg Manifesto and then the Companion Species Manifesto, in which she sort of makes a cyborg and a dog the same, because we are all having to find a way of living together and of this otherness in the other. But I think it's still thought from a human framework. It's about empathy, about finding ways to relate. So maybe if we go into completely virtual, completely digital, whatever that means, we lose completely connection. So it is also this tension field maybe that you're all looking for.
Yeah, and also I think 3D programs are very much shaped by cinema because they have been mostly developed by big company for making movie, and they are also made for making they have a lot of preset to make character or body, and I saw that the space is a Euclidean space. It was very difficult to make this non-Euclidean space in my movie, for example, because you kind of reach a certain limit. So
yeah, and this big company thing that you put on the table is also interesting, and that's maybe also what I meant with the politicization of the avatar. That it's not only that we want to manifest who we are, what we can be through the avatar, but also that now it is on this layer that things are being fixed. So in the game industry, you often see that you can now be any type of gender or any type of color or whatever in your avatar, but behind there's still like the Silicon Valley white dudes. So maybe it can also be just pushing away the problem from the deep core of things. But maybe I'm becoming too political now. Sorry for that.
Yeah.
But like, where do we have to work? That's also like, do we have to make it look more diverse or whatever that means, or do we have to look what's behind and look behind the structure or the framework?
Mm-hmm. But I think what Carl said, that this is a technology that is becoming way more available for like the broad public. I think that this is slowly going to change with the availability of 3D softwares to work with. Yeah.
That we are not reliable on the big tech corporations, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's
I
hope
hope
so.
Yeah.
I still think like that it's more like for individual use, but maybe not for individual development. But actually, that reminds me of the a small question I had in regard to the floss, because that was a reference to the dance, as far as I understood. But is it also a reference to the free, libre, open source software that exists? So was it also in this regard a hint? Because open source can be maybe something that's going to save us all.
I mean, yeah, I think I wanted to add to what Paula said, that I think it's regarding being tied to these bigger companies that manufacture these tools. I think kind of with the kind of possibility of how you now have access to a lot of resources and software online, it also helps, nurture like an environment where new tools can also be built by individuals per se. So it's not only about like the existing software, but actually enabling people from all kinds of different backgrounds and with all kinds of different ideas, to really like realize them through building their own tools. And I think that's also a really interesting shift that's happening now in the kind of digital sphere.
Definitely, but we're still like having a talk on Zoom and broadcasting on YouTube and building a platform. So like we still have like quite some work to do to be completely autonomous and free from the tech giants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, this topic, you stay like the big companies keep like the whole digital environment is also really the big companies are still in charge of everything, also everything we do, also the programs
and
we use and
I think they're there to stay. But that's also interesting that you see also there's a shift, for instance, from this first generation of net artists, for instance, in the 90s. They were really there to, from a utopian point of view, to give shape to a new way of communicating, to a new mass media environment. And now in your work, I see the best you can do is point out like how it is structured and what it is. And there's not maybe so much this aim for changing it, to change it, since that is an impossibility, but more to create awareness, so to say, of like how you move around and what you can be.
I was also wondering, because is the technique or the like all the possibilities of the software you use, is that is often the starting point, or your interest in what you can do with all these different techniques which are available now, or do you start with a subject matter? For example, Jean, that's also something quite visible. You are really interested in different techniques. You use also quite a lot of different techniques in your work, or different programs. But is the subject matter always the starting point, or?
No, it's mostly the tool. It's coming from experimentation mostly with the tool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's coming from the program and the tool mostly.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I'm really curious. Is it similar for the other people, Paula, Ceci, and do you also work in this way?
I can say something about this. So I come from an interior design background, actually. So just creating spaces. But I turned to 3D animation because that kind of static medium alone didn't really deliver the kind of messages and feeling that I wanted to impart to visitors. So 3D animation as a kind of storytelling format did allow this for me. So it started for me with the kind of messages in the story that I wanted to tell. And then the experimentation in the software supported that. So that's it for me.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's like I started experimenting with these softwares when the first COVID wave hit, because I didn't have access to my studio and I couldn't make things with my hands. And I'm still pretty new at working with them, so I don't know fully the possibilities they offer. So everything that I start still comes with an experimentation, but my next step is to just take a subject that I want to explore and fit it within these softwares, so that I'm not that controlled by the software, but I'm more in power of it.
Mm-hmm. And you see with like these techniques also give like more. You see that artists are more working in a collaborative way. It's less individual. Do you feel also this way, or is it a medium which you can use in a more collaborative way? Or, for example, this whole exhibition, you could say that's it's kind of a Gesamtkunstwerk. Do you think these techniques allow you to work more easily together, and to also integrate different mediums, or also a shift between maybe visual arts and also music? This is, for example, Paula, you worked together with a sound artist.
Yara Said.
Yeah. Said.
Yeah, we may collaborate also for a work in virtual reality, and I think it offers a lot of collaboration possibilities, because you can work with performers when it, in my opinion, like in my idea, when it comes to motion tracking movement. You can use the photogrammetry tool to 3D scan sculptures, add them into video games, and you can also use the work of sound designers. So it's really mixed media, like a lot of different artistic activities coming together in one. Yeah.
Maybe it's also like a kind like the meta medium, right? Like that the computer can simulate all other media, which of course then also, especially when talking about like virtual reality, this kind of like idea of simulation is already in this.
Mm-hmm.
Like the computer is a proxy for many other many other things.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, you know, you can have maybe something like text is more native to it, but then, you know, you're talking about 3D scanning a sculpture, right? So it's always a kind of simulation of something else, or like a kind of representation. And I think that's also maybe what's interesting about the space in which this exhibition is happening right now.
Yeah.
And those tools are also maybe developed for collaboration because they're made for the industry. So all the workflow and all the yeah, it's like almost built for teams, and somehow the program is kind of shaped for collaborative work. I don't know.
I was wondering if there are any, if you've seen any questions from the audience, because I just logged in again on the website, but I can't see any questions at the moment in the chat. Have you maybe followed this? Or if there are any questions in the chat? No. Otherwise, I will collect them and answer to them later. But I think we've spoken about quite a lot. Apologies for like the hiccup at the beginning of there were some technical problems here, but it was really nice to talk to you in this way. I still think it's a shame that we couldn't done this live, but I'm really excited about what the result is now, this online exhibition, and hopefully a lot of visitors will see your work this way, and also and I really like that I think some of you know each other, but it's also really a spontaneous and get together with different artists from different backgrounds and very different ways of expressing. So that's I'm really excited about it. Are there any questions by you, or do you want to add something to the conversation? I think we've discussed quite a lot, and there's also still food for thought on this subject matter. But
maybe I have one small question. Since in this space it looks like you are always alone, right? There's not a representation of any other visitor once you're there. And I was just wondering what it does for you as an artist, because normally you develop a work for like a public space, and now it's a sort of developing a work in a private space. Does that, but maybe I'm already like now answering another big topic, but more, yeah, like, does it open up for more, like, does it open up for a more intimate relation with your audience? And do you feel that this is expressed currently, or are there elements that you could develop further in future private presentations?
I mean, I think it's not completely true that you're always alone in the space, because there is a chat. So while there is maybe not a visual representation of people, there is definitely an element where people can come together and exchange.
Okay, true. But there's no representation, right, of any, like, yeah. But that's true. There is still interaction possible. So it's not a private viewing.
Yeah. It would have been another layer if you could walk around as an avatar through the space, but maybe that's something we should add in the second version of this exhibition.
It depends. Like it is also interesting to have a private show, and I think that's what I've always interested me so much in internet art, that you have a private relationship with the work, and that maybe as an artist you can be more personal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's more of like a invisible experience rather than a private experience, I would say, because I guess you would potentially be viewing the work, like you're sharing the space with other people online. It's just that you're kind of not aware, I guess, of kind of viewing the work at the same time as other people, which is always interesting, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot for your participation and your time during the weekend. And well, we will be seeing more of you, I think, and hopefully a lot of people will see the works in the show. And so I will end the meeting. Well, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for organizing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Super.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.